Hello, and welcome to Sir's Baked Goods. Today we're going to be making blueberry pie and meat pie. My dad's going to be working at the maple syrup bush for a little bit. He's going to need a meat pie for some dinners. And they're going to go camping later on. And my brother's favorite pie is blueberry pie, so it's a nice treat for him for when they go camping. So, let's get started. To get these started, we're just put our sugar and our berries together. I'm using frozen wild berries, so it's gonna be a little while before they thaw and all the juices come out. So while that's all thawing and juices coming out, I have all my vegetables cut. We can start doing this for the meat pie, and of course, start cooking our meat as well. Once we have all this done and in a pot, it'll slowly cool down, and when that's cooling down, that'll be the perfect time to start on our blueberries. So let's get started on the meat. Start sweating your onions and preheating your pan. I have all the spices, the bay leaf, all set up in here already. So we can just stir this up. Garlic as well. Get that nice and roasted and sweated. And we'll have the meat over here ready to go as well. Always make sure that you season at the end so that it doesn't concentrate the flavor too much and then it gets too salty or too peppery, because it's hard to fix that. It's always easier to do it right at the end. So let's just get this sweating and get this meat going. Always make it into like a nice pancake. That way you get as much browning as possible, which is going to be all that flavor that you want. So just flatten it out, put it down in there, and just make sure that it fully cooks and browns on one side, then flip it over, and then start mashing it up into smaller chunks. Now that the meat has browned and developed all that flavor, you can then flip it. Careful though, make sure you flip it nicely. And then let it cook on that side until it browns again so that you can get all of that flavor. After you do that, you can chop it all up and then fully cook it. Now that my onions and garlic have sweated a bit, I'm going to add in our other vegetables. Cook them for a tiny little bit before adding in our milk. So here's the carrots, the celery, and the potatoes. And then we're just going to stir this just a little bit, and then we'll add in our milk. Make sure you can still find that bay leaf. You don't want to lose that because that tastes like wood and isn't fun. So pour in your milk. Make sure you get all of it in there. And it should just be at the top of the vegetables. And then we're going to let it simmer until it's fully cooked. Now that the meat is brown on both sides, I'm just going to chop it all up, fully cook it, and then we'll mix both the vegetables and the meat together. Once everything's fully cooked, you can mix both into the bowl. Just make sure with your vegetables you get your leaf out, your bay leaf, and that you've tasted one and to make sure that it's nice and soft. I've already done that. Also at this stage you want to make sure that you're happy with your salt and pepper, and you're going to want to add whatever you want right now. And it's very simple. We have our meat. We'll let this cool down now. Just give it a little mix first so that it's nice and combined. So we'll let this cool down now and get started on our blueberry sauce. So make sure you get your spices in. Remember, this is to taste, so it's up to you how much you put in. These berries are thawed enough that I can now just put them in and let them drain into the pot from the strainer. Just make sure that you see all these juices. You don't just leave this. You scrape this all in. This will take probably another half an hour before all the juices are out. So while you're waiting, get your cornstarch slurry ready so you can zest and squeeze your lemon. Mix the cornstarch in, get that bowl ready off to the side. And if you don't have your pie dough done, you can do the pie dough right now. I already have mine done because I like to be prepared. But we'll just wait for about half an hour for this to let all its juices out. I'm all set up now. Berries are back in the bowl. I have my slurry ready and my butter. Just have to heat this up. Make sure that this is nice and mixed so that it doesn't put giant chunks of cornstarch in, or that will just gelatinize and then become really gross and weird. It doesn't really work. So make sure that this is fully mixed before you add it in. It's starting to heat up, so make sure that this is fully mixed. Add it all in at once. And make sure you stir right away. If this is really hot and you just pour it in and leave it off to the side, it will do that gelatinous thing no matter what. And it's gonna cause big problems for when you put it back into your berries. So just make sure you start mixing right away. Now we're just gonna mix until this thickens up. And then once it's thickened up and cooked out that starchy taste, we'll add in our butter. Once it starts thickening up, which you can start to feel now, it will thicken up really quickly. So make sure you're ready. And make sure once it's fully thickened, just like now, that you let it cook for about a minute or so to make sure all that starchy taste is out. And there we are. Fully thickened. We'll just cook out a little bit. Make sure that you're constantly stirring. You don't want to burn this or you'll ruin the whole pie. Take it off the heat. You can see nice and thick. And let's add in our butter while it's hot but not on the heat. What this will do is it will give it a nice shine, which is perfect for the pie. Just make sure that you don't put this on the heat or that shine will disappear. And you just keep stirring until that butter melts away. And then you can pour this sauce back into your berries. We'll wait for both our meat pie and our blueberries to cool down, and then we'll start rolling out our dough. We're gonna start rolling out our dough for both our pies. We're gonna do them at the same time. Even though the blueberry pie needs to be baked super hot at first, and then you can turn it down a bit, and the meat pie just needs to be at a low temperature for a long time. With my oven situation, the bottom rack is slightly cooler, which will be the perfect temperature for the meat pie. So I'm gonna try and do these at the same time and see how it works. If I have to let it go longer in the oven, that's fine, but this way I can get both of them in the oven and I don't have to wait an hour for one and then another hour for the other. This way I can try and get maximum an hour and maybe a little bit extra to finish one off. But let's first get this meat pie filled and covered, and then we'll do our blueberry pie. We have our meat pie ready. Remember, this is a covered pie, so you can cut a lot more off and use for your top, because you're going to put your top and bottom together to make a nice size crimp. And you gotta be very careful with this, because unlike with the bottoms or the lattice pies, you make so much that you know exactly how much dough you have. But when you put the top and the bottom together, sometimes it's way too much dough and you want to avoid that. So try and practice and make sure that you're not putting too much dough or not enough dough. and fill this pie nicely. Like I say when I make a bunch of pies, make sure that you're understanding how much liquid is in it. About the same amount of liquid will boil off no matter how many meat pies you make. So if you're making one, the recipe will work out perfectly fine. If you're making two, it'll get a little bit liquidy, and anywhere past two and there's going to be way too much liquid. So make sure you drain some of that liquid off so that you're not just making your dough soggy. Now let's put this off to the side and go start rolling out our top. Okay, so start rolling out your top. And remember that you're going to put this extra dough with your top, but do it once you've rolled this out a decent amount. Okay, I've rolled it out enough. Work the dough as little as possible, so just lie it down, don't crumple it up and start pressing it too much. This layering effect will also help keep it nice and flaky rather than just crumpling it up and putting it on. So make sure that you press it in nicely before you start putting flour on, or all you're gonna do is make it so that it doesn't stick, which then becomes a pain to start rolling out. And then just go until you got the right size. Also make sure not to roll your dough out too thick for the top. Follow the line you made. Press them together and crimp. Press around in a circle so you puff up the middle, so make it look bigger and more presentable to your customers. If you notice any areas that have extra dough, just snip it off. And there you go, all set up. Make sure you cut your nice star or whatever design you want. And while you wait to do your meat pie, make sure that your blueberry pie, make sure this meat pie is in the fridge, cooling down. Make sure you spread out these holes. There's no reason to cut them if they're not going to be open. So we'll put this in the fridge while we do our blueberry pie. This dough's been worked too much, so sadly we're going to have to throw that out. Now time for the blueberry pie. Same thing, roll this out. Any extra dough you have today you can use for the lattice. You don't actually need lattice for a blueberry pie, but it always makes it look nicer. So if you have the time and have the dough, you might as well do it. And you can even cover a blueberry pie, but I prefer to have a nice lattice so you can see those nice blueberries. The only time I really see blueberry pie covered is if they're not really using blueberries and they're just using blueberry juice and they're trying to hide that there's no blueberries inside. Okay, now for the blueberry pie. Make sure it's nicely in there. Give yourself a lot of dough to crimp. Okay, now let's fill it with our blueberries. Be very careful. Blueberries will stain the dough and burn in the oven. It's not going to affect your flavor, so don't worry about that, but it will affect the looks. And if you're making this at a bakery and it's all burnt, the customer won't want to try and eat it because they're going to think it tastes bad. Spread this out. Make sure to make a hill in the middle because again, it makes it look a lot bigger. And we'll start rolling out this dough into lattice. Here we are with our lattice. Just square it off. And then we're going to want 6 pieces. I used a bit of extra dough to make it easier for myself, so these are going to be slightly bigger pieces. So I'm just going to actually cut a bit off at the start. See if I can make 6 nice pieces. There we are. 6 nice pieces. And we'll start latticing up our pie. We'll throw this out. Okay, so let's start with I just need to adjust this piece over a bit, this piece over a bit, and we'll cut off the extra. Now we'll simply just fold our dough over and then crimp. Make sure if you get any blueberries on your hand, you wash it right away so that you don't stain any of your dough. Unfortunately, I stained the blueberry pie a little bit. Just be more careful than I was and you'll be fine. It's okay to stain it a little bit, but the more you stain it, the worse it's going to get, so try your best not to do that. We're just going to egg wash, throw this in the oven. So I'm going to be using the blueberries temperatures for both of the pies. This is where knowing your oven comes in handy. I know my oven's super cold, not super cold, but cold enough on the bottom rack that the meat pie won't burn or anything. So I can cook it with the blueberry temperatures, and both pies should be done right around the same time. The meat pie might have to stay in for a bit longer, but that's perfect. I don't lose too much time. I only have to bake for about an hour and 10 minutes or so, which will be perfectly fine. So let's get these in and see how they turn out. Here's the 2 pies coming out of the oven. A little bit of leakage on the blueberry pie, but other than that, everything looks good. Smelling good as well, so it's gonna be perfect. So this is gonna go to the maple syrup bush to get some workers fed, and that's gonna go to my brother for their camping trip. Obviously I can't taste test because of that, but if you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have my own website. Thank you, and have a nice day.